Michael, what's going on, dude?
Video as well?
Yeah, man, video as well. Is that cool with you?
Nice. I didn't know that because our background is opposite. Your background is brown and you white, and my foreground is brown and is black. We did this on purpose because we wanted you guys to have some visual representation of whatever I'm making up right now. So
that's true, man. We wanted contrast, so I think we achieved it. Man,
contrast, yes. And then one of us is really good looking too.
I know. So thank God you really raised the bar here on the attractiveness scale for the podcast. So I appreciate you coming on and making sure that we are also physically attractive.
I need to make sure we're still connected because I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I can hear you fine.
All right, cool. Well, I can hear you too now. So boom. Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me on here, man. Heard you guys got the #1 podcast on Apple, dad podcast on Apple. Wow. Going after the moms next.
You know, I mean, hey, somebody's got to be a voice out here, right?
Right. Because there's going to be a voice regardless. It might as well be a good one.
Might as well. That's what we keep saying, man. So, man, I've done a lot of homework on you. I know you've got a new exciting book coming out. 5 kids. What?
Dude. Yeah, that's not the name of the book. You didn't do that much research.
That's not the name of the book?
Right. It's not called 5 Kids. Right. Yeah. Wow. How do you even write that book when you got 5 of them running around? How many kids you got? You got kids?
4. I have 4 boys. So.
Oh, so that's really 17 kids.
There's a lot of energy. Dude, I say things out loud that I never thought I'd say to any other human being. You know, kidding around, true story. The audience has heard me say this, but don't eat cheese and crackers while you're taking a dump. I've said that to one of my kids. Like, I say things like that all the time. Yeah.
Okay, don't eat cheese and crackers.
I lost your audio.
Fact. She walked in the room and my son had a spray bottle looking at he's 6 years old. He got a spray bottle and he's looking at it like this as she walks past the bathroom. And she looks back and says, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I don't know." It just sprayed itself in the face. Because that's how we learn as boys, is we just got to do it. So
this was hairspray?
No, black people don't use hairspray. I don't know
what was it? Sorry, it kind of broke up there.
It was. I'm sorry. It was actually WD-40.
See, we missed that part because we lost the audio for a second. But WD-40 in the face.
Got WD-40 taking it just looking at it. Like, I wonder what would happen if my wife walks by and he's like, but he was then after that he couldn't blink without there was no. He could blink, but it was very slippery when he would blink. So.
Right. Yeah, I guess it would probably make things move a little bit easier. So, but yeah, 5 kids, man, and so the age spread with your kids is pretty from oldest to youngest, pretty big, right?
Yeah, our youngest is man. I normally mention this on. So we have one that was just getting out of Pampers and another one in college. So actually, it's the same one. Our kids are brilliant. Brilliant kids. Yeah, we got quite the spread, man. You got a spread too, or no? You don't?
Well, yeah, we call them the bigs and the littles. So we have 14, 12, 7, and 4. See,
the bigs and the littles. So the bigs are the ones who you care about the most, and you just got a little bit of feelings for the other ones. Is that how that works out?
The littles take a lot, as you know. There's a lot more eyes on them, a lot more things they're getting into, a lot of craziness, a lot of energy. The older 2 have energy too. It's just, as you know, when they get to be about that age, it's like a different kind of energy.
Yeah, dude, boys are a lot of work.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it until I had one. I was like, what are you doing? Why are you eating your shoe right now? Just constantly just going. That stuff is a lot of work, man.
It is.
Oh, the book. You're asking about the book. Yes, we do have a book. The book is called Funny How Life Works, where we actually use funny to explain and help people understand how life works. So I'm super, super excited about the book, man. We're just using stories about really growing up into this thing called manhood and then fatherhood and the funny things that happen and then the life lessons that come as a result of it, man. So super pumped about that book. It's doing amazingly well right now, as far as I know, because we're recording this right now. It's doing amazing. So Funny How Life Works. You're going to get that for sure. Super exciting, man.
Yeah, before we dive into your book, man, I'm just so curious about how your upbringing was. I've heard some things like paying rent at 14 years old, like just things like that. Just blew my mind when I heard that stuff, man. So tell me what it was like growing up for you.
So my dad, man, I used to wake up from about the age 13 to, I think it started at 13 or 12. When I was in high school, I would wake up in the morning, like 6:30 in the morning, probably about 6:15. And I have to walk to school every day. Like this isn't some old, like I literally had to walk to school, and I grew up in Michigan, and be freezing. Like it'd be cold outside. Like sometimes it'd be so cold, if I blink, it would crunch. Like it was crazy cold. That's ice, everybody, in case y'all didn't know I was talking about. Anyway, so I'm sitting here and it's cold, and I'm walking to school, and it takes me probably about an hour, 10 minutes to get to school. But every day there's this van that would pass me on the way to school every day. I'm talking about, like, it was a busy street, but there's this one in particular van that I would see every day. And I just had to understand that's how it is. And that van was my dad, like literally driving by me every single day on his way to work. But here's the thing. Me and my dad didn't talk a lot when I was a kid. Like I would just say, hey, give me a ride. So I didn't want to risk it. Like, what if he's not going to work today? So I would just leave every morning, walk. And then after school, I have football practice. After football practice, I get on the bus and then head to Instant Oil Change, where I worked at. And this was probably starting at 13 years old. My dad was the manager at the Instant Oil Change. And I started making money, and I wanted to buy shoes and all that cool stuff. And my dad was like, you got to pay rent. I was like, pay rent? He literally charged me $250 a month for rent. And then one time, I remember probably right around the age 17 years old, I had enough. Finally, I said to my dad, I was like, listen, this doesn't make any sense. For this much money, I could have my own place. And I thought my dad was going to push back, like, what? Like, be upset. Instead, my dad's exact words was, aha, now you getting it. Which means he was setting me up all along to get my own place. So that's what I did. 17 years old, I moved out, got my own place. I did learn a lot. And I thought my dad was doing that thing where parents charge you rent and they stack up all the money. So when you leave, no, bro, I didn't see any of that money. He bought fishing equipment or something with that. I didn't see that money. So, but it did teach me a lot. Like I understand fully that nothing is going to be handed to you. Like it's just not going to be handed to you. And I also understand even now, I used to think it's all about earning money, but it's not really about earning money. It's really about using money the way it should be used. Maybe that's helping somebody else. Maybe it's investing. It's really, money is just a tool that takes on the characteristics of the person who's holding it. That's one of the big things that I learned as a result of that. And there's some other lessons my dad gave me as well. So,
talk to us about do you have brothers and sisters as well?
Yes.
How many you got?
No, I do. I have two sisters and a brother. I had an older sister, but she passed away when I was right around 14 years old. And that was pretty hard looking back at that. But then I can also try to look at the ways in which I've grown as a result of that as well. So now I have a younger brother. All my siblings are still in Michigan, and I live in Dallas now. I went from Michigan to New York City, and then from New York, I moved to Los Angeles, and I met my wife. And then from there, we moved to Dallas about 8 years ago with our 5 kids, man. It's pretty doggone awesome.
Yeah, man. That is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So, was your dad charging everybody rent?
Who else did he charge rent to? So my dad did not. Nope. My sisters didn't have to pay rent. And then my brother was way too young to pay rent. I was like the oldest boy, and I just had to pay rent. To this day, I don't understand why. And here's something else my dad did that was amazing. When my dad needed to have a conversation with me about sex or something, and I recommend this to all dads. I do this with my kids now too. Whenever I need to have a talk with them, and men know this instinctively, that women, if you're listening, never say to a man, hey, we need to talk. Oh my goodness, that is the doggone worst. Because now we just going like, what just happened? Well, no, you pregnant? Get what? Like all sorts of stuff going through our head. So what my dad would do to me, just brilliant, is he would always talk while we were doing some other activity. Like he'd always have these conversations, like if we're fishing, we're on a boat, we're fishing, I catch something, wind it in, and then during this, while I'm baiting the hook again, suddenly we're talking about sex or we're talking about drugs. But the greatest thing my dad ever did was there's a guy at our house who used to do drugs. our house was one of them cribs. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. And this guy wanted to smoke some weed or something at our house. And I was sitting on the couch. And this is the greatest move my dad ever made. And the guy was like, wait, I'm sorry. Is it okay if I smoke this joint in front of your son? Or maybe I should put it away. And instead of him saying put it away, my dad actually said to the guy, he said, I don't care if you smoke weed in front of him. My son isn't dumb enough to do those things that you do. When he said that, I cannot tell you how much, like, I felt pumped up. I felt like I am the man, like, yes. And I'm telling you, I'm pretty sure I point to that as the reason I've never, or one of the reasons I've never done drugs before, never smoked weed. I never drank alcohol before. I had NyQuil one time. That stuff is strong. I'm just going to tell you right now, like, that stuff is powerful. But I look back at that moment as my dad, because I really believe as kids, we live for our father's approval. But as adults, we live from our father's approval. And even as a grown man now, me and my dad have an awesome relationship. I still live from his approval.
Man, I love that. Like giving your kids, like speaking their truth, of how you view them into them. That's a really powerful thing. And it sounds like you really kind of took that and ran with it, because I believe you do the same, even when it comes to your wife, right?
Absolutely, man. I do this thing where there's two moves that I suggest that your listeners do. One of them is, it's kind of like what my dad did. It feels a little sneaky, but it's so much more potent. Meaning, if you talk about your kids when you don't think they're listening, it is so powerful. Because my dad didn't know I was listening when he said that about me, which means he wasn't necessarily, he wasn't lecturing me, or he wasn't doing it to puff me up. It's how he really felt about me. So I will purposely talk about my kids, whether they're around or not, or if I think they're in earshot, I may add a little bit of volume to my voice just so they know that's how I feel about them. The other thing is whenever I introduce my kids, most of the time, like when people introduce me on stage, they'll be like, ladies and gentlemen, you've seen them on the Tonight Show, Comedy Central. They'll mention, TED Talks. They'll mention all of these things, and they give me this big introduction. Then the stage is set. So when I come out, we can have a great time together. Well, I purposely do that with my children as well. Meaning when I introduce them, not on stage, but just to an individual, I'll be like, this is my daughter, Cheryl. This is my daughter. She's brilliant at tennis. Her ability to write is crazy. And just give her that introduction no matter where we go or who they're meeting. Because what other chance do you have an opportunity to actually brag about your kids that's not as formal, which actually I believe has the biggest impact. Because they can distinguish between, oh, you're just doing that because it makes you look good versus I'm doing this because this is who you are.
No, it's you're not even speaking to them. You're speaking about them in front of them, which is really powerful because they're probably identifying with that identity in the lens that you see them through, right?
That's great. That's a great point. Absolutely. You just said it way more articulate than I would, but that was a way to show off. I appreciate that. What did you go to again?
We skipped over something, man. And this was my fault, but I'd really like to hear. So what happened with your sister?
Oh, so yeah, my sister, when she was like 16, I think she was 16 years old, she actually ran away. And we were looking for her for some days or whatever. And then she ran away with this friend, and they went into this house where they were staying at. And I mean, they're super young. They didn't know. So they actually made a fire in the house to stay warm. Carbon monoxide, them not knowing, they didn't even make it through the night. So then I remember being, 13, 14, and then sitting in the back of the car. I still vividly remember this. I'm sitting in the back of my mom is looking, and they have a tip that they may be in this house. So my mom and the other girl's mom who she was with, they go up into the house to look. And then I remember my mom coming downstairs running, crying, and I'm in the back of the car, and I'm just like, what's going on? And it was not good. So that's what took place.
Looking back, first of all, man, I'm so sorry to hear that. I can't imagine what that was like because you were 14 at the time.
Yeah, 13, 14 years old.
Man, That is a big age for something like that to happen, because you're just old enough
Right.
that you know everything that's going on, and you can comprehend what's happened. But it's almost like, what do I now do with all this? And then, no doubt about it, obviously your family was probably crumbling for quite some time. I mean, with that kind of devastating news, I can only imagine.
Yeah. It was pretty tough. And then we weren't one of those families who, I mean, I didn't know what therapy was until I was 30 something. I was like, you can go talk to people about this. But so I had to form my own thoughts and opinions on it and kind of really self-survive. And I actually think that we've done pretty well as a family. Sometimes, I know this will sound weird to some listeners, I think sometimes you can actually overprocess things. Meaning we dealt with it. I'm super, like, I love my sister, even though then I didn't, because I was 13, and what 13-year-old boy loves his 16-year-old sister? That's just weird. We would fight all the time. I do remember beating her up for the first time ever, though. I know it sounds weird because we're talking about this, but she used to beat me up all the time. I never won a fight, ever. And then one time I took both my fists like this, and I hit her in the chest and knocked the wind out of her. And I was so scared. I was like, oh. Then after she started breathing again, I was like, dun-dun-dun, I won, yay. And then she beat me badly after that, and then that was over. So I do think sometimes we can over process to the point where, like, if you process something too long and it starts taking years and years and years, you build a pattern of processing the negative things that happened in your past. So then if you build that pattern up, the next time something negative happens, you'll continue to live life in the past for that negative thing that happens. And I don't really believe that things happen necessarily to you. I think they can happen for you. So as a result of that, I'm actually a stronger, greater person, more prepared to deal with things like that and even teach off of it. So I can see the good in it for sure. Like, even with this virus that we're dealing with, I mean, if you can get some good perspective, there's a lot of amazing things that have come as a result of this. So,
man, that is powerful. Mm-hmm. I never heard you out of, I've recorded now probably 650 shows. And I've never heard anybody say it quite like that you can overprocess, and then that then becomes the pattern. And then that's all you do is process, which, if you're stuck in that rut of constantly processing and never getting through, and that's a rut in and of itself.
Because if you overprocess, you can't really prosper. Because prosper means to go forward and grow and do some great things. But if you keep sitting on what's behind you, like, try driving your car looking through the rearview mirror. Like, it's good to take a glance once in a while so you can know what's going on, like if you plan on making some turns. But if you stay there, what's in front of you is going to hurt even more. Now you got to process that. And then what do you like? Yeah, so it's a pattern you can easily get caught up in. So,
and looking back on just that challenge in your life, and I'm sure that wasn't the first, and it definitely won't be, it definitely hasn't been the last. Mm-hmm. But with that perspective of, hey, life is happening for me. It's not necessarily, I am not a victim of my life or my consequences. Mm-hmm. I will prevail. How do you move forward when you feel like, man, I feel like I'm up against the wall right now. I feel like I'm really being challenged. How do you keep that perspective?
Yeah. So what I do, man, what I do often is I actually get excited because I have this ability. When I was a kid, I used to not read very well. I would struggle with my reading all the way through high school, really. In fact, I remember graduating high school, and I was driving down the street. I'm 19 years old. I'm driving down the street. I saw a billboard. I'm doing about 50 miles an hour. The speed limit was 45. And I see this billboard, and I drive past it, and I don't know what it said. I'm 19 years old, and I sat and I did the math. I said, that doesn't make sense, because somebody spent a lot of money on that billboard, and I'm sure they know how many words can be read if the average speed is 45 miles an hour, and I haven't understood it yet. So I actually pulled over and said, something's not right. So I went and they had this free assessment where you can find out how well you are at reading. And I remember walking into this place called Sylvan Learning Center. There's a white lady there, an older white lady. And I said, hey, I'm not sure if I read very well. And she goes back there and she tests me. And then she said the whole test took like 30 minutes or whatever. And now I know she's done with the test, but she's not coming back to talk to me. And I'm looking and she's talking to her friends. And I realize she's actually afraid to give me my results. And I'm like, man, is it that bad? Like, what is wrong? Like, she think I'm gonna go? And then she came out with another friend. They tiptoeing all scared, and they hand me the results. And it turned out after graduating high school, I'm now 19 years old, that I was reading almost at a fourth grade level, like almost to a fourth grade level. And they thought I would be upset. What were we mad at you for? They thought, I can't believe you did this. Like, that doesn't even make sense. So I actually felt kind of relieved at that moment, because it meant that what I was suspecting was correct. Something wasn't right. We won't even get into the educational system that I was going through in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But I look back at that, and I was able to determine that something's wrong with my reading based off of the fact that I'm doing 45 miles an hour down the street. People pay money for this sign. I couldn't read it. Stop, do the math. Like, that processing was still going on. So even today, now I read just fine, but that inability to read, what would happen is I would find different ways to figure out what the information meant. And now that resilience to figuring out no matter what is how I do life. Like, I'm going to figure this thing out. I look at it like, snap, whatever this thing is, this could be a fun challenge. I know I can figure this out. Whenever I look at a word or a scenario, I got 7 different ways to look at it almost immediately. And it comes from what I thought was a handicap, but it turns out actually it's a strength. So your listeners probably have something that they think is a handicap, but if you can retweak how you look at it, you'll really recognize it as actually a strength. Mine not reading as a child, a bunch of these things that I could just sit and murmur and complain about, but instead I can retool them and realize this is actually this is actually a gift that I have right now. Listen, this ability to look at things different, it's the primary place that I pull my comedy from. Had I not had those challenges reading, my comedy specials, all of the videos that you see on YouTube wouldn't be nearly as funny if not for that, what people would call a handicap.
Man, talk about turning what could be perceived as a huge challenge into a gift, man. It's whatever lens you put it through, right?
Absolutely.
And I love how you did that. And since you mentioned, by the way, is there a pandemic? Is there something going on in the world?
No, not in the Black community anymore. I think it's not here. I think
So what have been some of the amazing things that have come out of dealing with COVID and the pandemic in your life?
Well, I traveled doing stand-up comedy and keynote speaking at corporations and doing some really cool, fun stuff. But I was a little ready to not travel anymore. So we were already preparing to really burn the boats for personal appearances. I only want to make an appearance somewhere if I really feel like I should go. I don't want to do it because I feel like I have to. I don't want it to be the financial driver. So we were already preparing to do some digital events. And then suddenly the boats are just burnt. Like, I had a match in my hand, but I was like, wait a second, I wasn't ready to throw it yet. So now what's happened, it's caused our team to accelerate that creation, that creativity. So now we have some really cool, I created a course that goes along with the book called Funny How Life Works, where we actually use comedy to help people understand how life works. And the reason we use the comedy is because whenever you laugh, your heart is open. Well, if the heart is open, that's when we want to make the deposit. That's why Super Bowl commercials are always funny, for example. They spend millions of dollars on a 30-second commercial, and more times than not, it's always funny because they know funny will penetrate and you'll remember it more. But the other thing I've learned is whenever you laugh, laughter is an emotional response. And when you attach learning to an emotional response, even after you're done learning, your brain will still be attractive to that information. So in the book, Funny How Life Works, we actually tell these funny stories mixed in with some really great understanding that helps people do life better. So it's literally, that's why it's called Funny How Life Works. So we want you to laugh. Like, there's some laugh out loud stories in here in the midst of some understanding that I really think people can run with.
Well, since your book isn't out yet, as we're recording, I know this week it actually comes out. Can you share one story in there that's your favorite?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite stories from the book would probably be, So I told you I worked at the oil change place, right? So I'm 14 years old. I'm working at this oil change place. My dad is the manager, but he has I think Tuesdays off or something. And this oil change place had 3 bays, and I would work down in the pit. Well, I got really fast at changing the oil down in the pit under the cars. And then I decided to start coming up out of the pit. I would help put air in the tires. And a few times I would actually talk to customers. Even though I wasn't really sure, I was a little afraid to talk to customers, but I was done in the pit. The oil change is supposed to take like 10 minutes. I was getting them done in like 6 minutes. I was just moving crazy fast. So there was a assistant manager who was new. His name was Mark. And Mark is brand new. He came from another location, and he was a little mean, but he also had a racist tone about him. Well, not just a tone, like he was racist, right? But he did not know. Well, let me just say this. So I came out of the pit one day when Mark was there. I didn't even know Mark was there. I come up out of the pit and he says to me something he had said before. He said, "Hey, junior boy, get down in the pit where you belong. You shouldn't be up here." And then he's kind of looking and nudging to the other guys like, "Isn't that funny?" The other guys don't say anything. I go back down into the pit. Now, I don't tell this to my dad, who is the manager, but this guy doesn't even know my dad is the manager. So I never told him, I never said that to my dad, because I know that my dad loved me way more than he loved his job position. And they don't call that dude Big Mike for nothing. So I was not going to tell my dad. I was just going to deal with it like I needed to deal with it. And my dad had already kind of instilled that in me a little bit, where I could come to him, but I could also need to deal with stuff. So then it was a Saturday. We were crazy busy. I come up out the pit to help. And I hear it again. "Junior boy, didn't I tell you to stay down in the pit where you belong?" And I go back down into the pit, and then I hear a voice that used to bring fear in me as a child. "Mark, can I talk to you, please?" Dude, it's my dad. My dad heard what this dude said. And now I'm in the pit. If you can imagine, I'm down in the pit, and all I can see is like 6 inches. I see the muffler and I see the floor, and all I can see is their feet. And as I'm looking there, my dad walks back, and then Mark follows him. My dad is wearing like a size 13, a black boot. Mark has like a size 9, and he's following him over. And then right then, the car that I'm under, they start the motor. So I can't hear what's being said. All I can see is the bottom of their boots, about 6 inches of their boots and their shins. And I'm looking, and they're toe to toe at this point, having whatever conversation they're having. And Mark, I think, is about to leave because his left foot goes in the air, and I'm thinking he's about to step off. But as I'm thinking this and trying to hear what they're saying, his right foot goes in the air as well. Both his feet are now hovering as my dad is talking to him. Then both feet, probably 20 seconds later, go down to the floor. And then I don't know what happened. The engine turns off. I stay down in the pit. About 5-10 minutes later, I go upstairs to go to the restroom, and suddenly Mark is trying out for the nicest man in the world contest. He is being so amazingly nice to me. I can't even explain to you how awesome he's been. And
God.
And what happened in that moment, like when I would come up out the pit, my dad would explain to me, if I'm going to talk to customers, I have to meet them where they are when I talk to them. I can't just be talking like, "Yo, what's up? Here we go." And then after that incident, my dad said to me, he said, "Listen, son, it's very important that you be willing to meet people where they are. But sometimes you have to let people know where you're from." And I was like, whoa. So the takeaway from this is there's going to be times in life where all of us, where you feel like you're in a pit as a dad, as an employee, as a boss, where you're down in a pit, but you do have a father who wants to lift you up. You just have to be willing to listen to his voice, and he's going to get all that other stuff completely out of the way, but he will lift you up out of the pit that you may be in life. So boom. So that's one of the stories. It's not all the details of the story, but that's one of the stories from my life of probably 25 or 26 that we share in Funny How Life Works.
Dude, you told that story so good. Oh. Like I'm literally like I'm on the edge of my seat, and I'm like visualizing everything that you're saying. But dude, man, your dad sounds like an amazing person. Is he still with us?
Yeah, man, my dad is completely amazing. And listen, let me say it like this. There was a time I need to check on my dad. So when I say my dad was amazing, I don't want people to listen and say, "Man, I wish I had an amazing dad." You don't understand. There are some things that my dad did that were, I'll just say there's some things that he's done. If I mention those things, but I won't because I haven't got his permission yet, you would think that I had the worst dad ever. But I'm here right now to tell you, my dad is the most amazing dad that exists. And here's the thing. whoever's listening right now, whoever your dad is, I can tell you right now that he absolutely did the best job he could possibly do. Period. He did the best job he could possibly do. Even if you never, ever met him before, he still did the best job he could do. You're just probably telling a story that is most likely not serving you or him well. You think because you never met him before, he doesn't care about you, but you never met him before. How do you know every single day he's not getting on a bus to come see you, but just doesn't have the courage to and turns around and walks off? And then when he walks off the bus, he's sitting there in tears crying. And the reason he can't come any closer to you is because the way his dad used to beat him and abuse him, and he's afraid he'll be that person too. But every day he's trying that. You still haven't met him before. But which one of those stories serve you better and which one is true? You don't even know. Like, you have no idea. So your dad has done the best he can, and that's the place you want to live from. And then because you're not going to be perfect as a dad, so you might as well give your dad some slack.
I feel like you're talking right at me. And the reason I say that, I mean, the audience probably knows my story, but I didn't start a relationship with my own biological father until I was 30, and that was by accident because I met him in a Starbucks as a total fluke. And I think for a long time, I was angry, right?
Uh-huh.
And, why did he do that? How could he? And then my mom, on the other hand, too, she struggles with alcohol. Big time. Been married 3 times, always dated, married kind of the same type of guy. And I think for a long time, I'm 45 years old now. And I think for a long time I was angry, and I that was the story, right? The story over and over again. Poor me, my family this, my family that. And then after a while, especially when you become a parent, you've got 4, I got 5. I mean, vice versa. You got 5, I got 4. See, I don't even know the number anymore.
Man, did you just have sex with your wife real quick? What
That's why during the commercial break, that's what we did. But literally 30 seconds. That's how good I am. But
you had time to make a coffee.
Yeah, good for me, bad for her. But when you become a parent and when you become a father, that's one thing that you learn. You're like, wow, I'm just doing the best I can with what I got. Like, I'm literally doing the best that I can with what I have. And I think you nailed it with exactly what you said. So, man, if you're out there and you're listening, you're like, man, my upbringing was really tough. It was challenging. But I will tell you, I think it was probably 10 years ago, I let all that go. I was like, hey, they did the best they could with what they had. They had some very challenging upbringings themselves, and they just literally did the best they could. And that's it. And what I can tell you is, man, just even sharing that perspective and feeling that way about both of them, it feels good to me. Like, it's such a comforting feeling just to let that go. And I can't remember. I was just going to say, I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but it was like, how is that serving the person who's holding that burden, right? And it doesn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And dude, how do you, I think that's great. Hey, I want to play this game with you, man. I made this game up. I was having a meeting with some guys, and these are some dudes who are doing big stuff. I'm talking about, I was probably the only dude at the table who didn't have my own jet. So I'm meeting with these guys, right? And somehow we started talking about dads. I made up this game, and I want to play with you, so I'm just giving you a heads up. Where we went around the circle and we started talking about dads. And then when they got to me, I was like, dude, my dad is the greatest dad ever. But I started the sentence with something super negative that my dad had done. And they all went around the table. And this one guy in particular, his dad, when he was 6 years old, his dad was using drugs. And then right around 8 years old, his dad would give him drugs. Right. And then it would make him go and sell drugs at 8 years old. And then 10 years old, he's selling drugs. His mom was alcoholic. It was all bad. And as he's talking, as you can imagine, he's feeling really bad and he's looking all upset or whatever. And then the other guys had similar stories. One guy, his dad cheated on his mom like 8 times, got all these extra kids, just some miserable, bad stories. Right. And then I said, hey, why don't we do this? Because you guys are. And then, he was like, they were blaming their dads for some stuff. I said, why don't we play this game? Why don't we play this game called, what did I call it? The reblame game. I said, and the way the reblame game works is we're going to blame our dads for something, but we're going to blame them for something good. Because if we're blaming them for the negative, there must be something positive too. I said, I'll go first. And I said, I blame my dad for how much I really love kids who aren't even my kids. Because at some point, my dad had another woman and they had kids, or she already had kids, and he had her separately on the side. So now, as a result, I just love other kids, even when they're not mine. And then we went around a circle, and the guys were quiet at first. And then the one guy whose dad, and they start getting a little choked up. And then the guy said, you know what? I blame my dad. This is the guy whose dad had all of the kids outside of marriage. And a light bulb went off in his head. He said, you know what? I blame my dad for me never, ever cheating on my wife. There's no way I could ever cheat on my wife. I blame my dad for that. And then the guy who dad gave him the drugs and had him sell drugs, I said, well, okay, it was his turn. And he was like, I don't have anything. Now, earlier in our conversation, I said to him, now this is a go-getter. I'm talking about everybody at the table got a jet except for me. I got one, but I'm letting American Airlines hold it right now. They're just holding on to it for me. And I let them use it for other people. And hopefully I get a seat in the back. So I'm sitting there and I said, so what do you got? He said, he couldn't come up with anything. And I said, let me ask you this question. I said, have you ever done drugs? He was like, no. I said, let me get this right. Everything you do in life, you do it hard to the point where you got your own jet, these companies, this business, you go hard. I said, have you ever done drugs? He said, well, I did smoke some weed one time. I said, so let me get this right. You go hard with everything you do, but you only smoke weed one time? And he started to break down. And he said, I blame my dad for me never doing drugs, ever doing any hard drugs. And he was able to see how his dad actually helped him in a way. One of my best friends, Bob Goff, gave me a story about his dad that blows me back. When you have him on the podcast one day, or if you have it, it'll blow you back. So I want to ask you, what can you re-blame your dad for?
This is good. This is good, man.
Mm-hmm.
And those of you guys listening in the audience, maybe let's encourage them to play along.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I'm going to give you guys a second here as I'm going to come up with mine.
You take a second too, man, because it does take a little bit of processing,
right? Where
you got to kind of think it through. One guy in the group also another guy blamed his dad for, his dad, they adopted some kids and he felt that he was ignored.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now he has 5 adopted kids that he just loves, but he never made the connection that the reason he's so attached to those kids is because that's how his dad treated them. Even though all he was noticing was the lack of love he was getting from his dad.
Yeah.
So at the end of that meeting, he was like, I blame my dad for these 5 amazing kids that we didn't have to give birth to that I get to love.
Dude, that's amazing. And I should have rephrased this. I didn't need a minute. As you were telling those stories, man, I was listening to every word, but I was also reflecting in the background, and I realized something. I'm going to get to that here in a second. But, for all you guys listening, right? All the things that were done wrong and all these things, if there are good things happening in your life, there's probably a reason there, right? And what I can tell you is the thing that I blame my dad for is the amazing marriage that I have with my wife. I've known her for 24 years. She's my best friend. She's the most amazing mom. We've got a great relationship. There's never been any temptation of divorce, separating, or anything like that with us. I blame my dad for this work. I blame my dad for Dad Edge podcast. I blame him for, the 3 books I've written, the 4th one coming out. Without all that struggle and without all those things growing up, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. To be honest.
Think about that. That is so doggone powerful, because why would you do this if not for the dad that he was? Like, your dad is the reason we get to have this podcast, this #1 dad podcast on Apple right now. Boom. Live from that. Dude, listeners, listen. You guys need to go ahead and re-blame your dad for something. At least write one thing down. If he was able to come up with like 3 off the dome, write something down and blame him for it, because it's him. It's him. Wow.
Man, that is one powerful. Did you come up with that like off the cuff in that moment?
Yeah, dude, we were just at the table. I'm telling you, man. And listen, the book has some really cool stuff like this too. So please, to get Funny How Life Works, I'm just randomly say it's funny how life works. And so I'm telling you, dude, so my inability to read as a child, along with the sense of humor, dude, and I just love helping people. When you bring all that stuff together, along with just clearly just being on my face and trying to hear from God, some good stuff really, really happens, dude. Because, yeah. So, dude, that is powerful. The fact that you just blamed your dad for this podcast, if you would have had the dad that you wanted, this podcast would exist.
Oh, I agree. Without a doubt, man. Without a doubt. Well, dude, I want to talk about marriage real quick, and then we're going to finish off with your book. How long have you been married to your wife?
Which one? I'm Mormon. I'm just playing. We have been married for 16 years. Yeah. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. I was a single dad before I met my wife. Single dad of 3. Yeah.
Wow, man.
Being a single, if you're a single dad out there and you're listening, first of all, wow. How'd you find time to listen to the podcast?
Right.
Like, I don't even know how you pulled that off, but big ups to you. Just dads in general. That's a serious job, man. Go ahead.
Yeah. So what's something that you've learned about marriage? Like if you could maybe reblame your wife. I'm kicking this back to you.
That's hilarious. So my wife, the biggest thing that, so we do something in our marriage that we didn't know we were doing until Andy Stanley told me I was doing it. I literally didn't know. So we have this thing where, so let me use this as an example. If we were in the same studio right now and I had $300 and I handed it to you and be like, hey man, here's $300. What would your response be?
Why are you giving me this money?
Right. So what if I said, hey, I'm giving it to you just because, and I gave it to you?
That'd probably be a part of me to be like, dude, I can't take this.
Yeah. Right. That, which is really a telltale sign, because that just means there's a give and receive thing. Because some people, men especially, have a hard time receiving sometimes, but the greatest gift you can give someone is the ability to give, right? So but that's another topic. But let's say we were friends and you knew my heart and all that stuff. It was in a gift back box and I wrapped it up. It was pretty. It was $500. I handed it to you and you were able, like, how would that feel?
I mean, man, I'd feel amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, what if I owed you $500 and I walked up to you and I gave you $500? Then what? How would that feel?
I'd feel like, okay, yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for getting my money. Yeah. So the difference between the two is what me and my wife do, and we didn't know we were doing this, dude. When I do something for my wife, I actually don't expect anything in return. Like, I literally don't. Then when she does something for me, it's as if she gave me a gift I wasn't even expecting. So we don't have this debtor relationship, and it is constantly fun. But if fellas, if you wash the dishes and now you're expecting to go and, wash the dishes. and then she come to bed and she just want to dry the dishes. She don't want to have nothing to do with the dishes. Now you're upset because you had an expectation. But if you're just washing the dishes simply to wash the dishes, and then if she happens to say to you, hey, you know what? I got some suds. You want to wash these? Now, suddenly it's a bonus. Both of you guys win. You did it to make her happy. She did it to make you happy. It's not a debtor relationship. And there is so much joy in that alone. We didn't even realize it till we start looking back and seeing how we do things. My wife's love language is acts of service. I'm constantly doing stuff, but I'm never doing it to expect something in return. I'm just not. I'm just doing it to doing it. I'm just handing out $500 as much as I can and not even doing that's just an analogy. I'm not paying my wife to be like, yeah, you're a good wife. So that is the biggest thing that I've learned. And we didn't even understand that until about a year and a half ago. That's why we just, I love being around her. I just straight up love being around her. And I'm not saying that just because it's like, I can't even think about if we have an argument, this is a move we make, is we talk about it immediately. And we actually won't go to sleep without talking about it that same day. our record, we stayed up until 3:46 in the morning one time. Since then, when you do that, when you commit and do that one time, at least one time, what'll happen is because you lost all of that sleep, the next time something comes up, you'll deal with it immediately. Your brain is going to be like, no. Remember that before? No. I don't want to do that. And you'll start working on it immediately, but go ahead and make the sacrifice. Me and my wife rarely argue because we really enjoy sleep. I just want to throw that out there. So
I love the fact that you guys go about your relationship with doing things for each other without keeping score. You know, one quote that we always say all the time is, come to every interaction with appreciation and curiosity. Don't come with expectation and agenda.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah. When you do that, I mean, exactly what you're just talking about right now. It's like, I appreciate you. I love you. I'm going to do something because I know that this is how I love you. This is how you receive love. Right. And yeah, without doing it with expectation, because expectation, man, that is like, that's like the first seed of emotional resentment. Right.
Absolutely. That's well said. That is so well said. In fact, if you're giving to her just to give, this is even better. Like if you're giving to her and she doesn't owe you anything and you do not expect anything, that's one thing. But if you build up that pattern of giving to her no matter what, you can give something to her even when the circumstance doesn't necessarily say that she deserves something. Because now you're just doing it because you feel like you should. And under that circumstance, she'll be like, how much more powerful is it if I gave $100 to a homeless guy? It's great. What if I gave $100 to a homeless guy that had a Confederate flag shirt on? Like I'm doing it clearly because God is telling me to do it versus my own feelings. I'm just doing what I feel like I should do, not because the circumstances are going to dictate it. If you allow the circumstance to dictate what you do, you're going to allow the circumstances to dictate what you do. Boom.
Dude, well said.
Mm-hmm.
Well said, man. Let's wrap up with your book. So what was the driving force behind even writing this book?
Man, being on stage, I know how much it impacts people when I'm in front of 10,000 people, everybody's laughing. And then I share a story. After seeing that impact, I was like, you know what, there's some stories that I need to share with people because some people just like to consume the content in that manner. And then when I threw a couple stories by people, they're like, that is so powerful. So after writing them out, I was like, wow, I need to go ahead and do this. And I was encouraged by Bob Goff and even Donald Miller to go ahead and get this thing laid out on paper. So we did it, man. And the name, Funny How Life Works. And, you know, we even created a podcast called Funny How Life Works, where literally we just use funny to help people do life better, man. So I hope that when people read this, that they get a lot of, I hope they can be entertained. You can sit down with your family and read the stories. And then as a result of, there's always some really cool chunk. Like I learned a lot out of this book. There's a book, like at least 3 chapters talk about when I was homeless. I used to live in New York City on the east side. My address was 1997 Lumina Drive because I drove a 1997 Lumina. So I actually talk about being homeless and alone in New York. And there's some funny things about being homeless, which sounds crazy, but it literally is some cool stuff in there, man. So Funny How Life Works. Please get the book. And I also want to say, with everything that's going on in the world, the proceeds from the book, what we decided to do is going to a Black family in America. So, yeah.
I was like, oh, who's it going to go to? What organization do? I love it, man. Where can people find the book?
You can get it anywhere books are sold. You can go to funnyhowlifeworks.com, or you can go to Amazon, or if you can find a bookstore that's still open, sure, yeah, go there too. But yeah, it's pretty much all over the place, man. So super excited. Get Funny How Life Works. It'll be a great non-birthday gift too. Like if it's not somebody's birthday, you can give it to them. It'd be great. Say, hey, happy non-birthday, because I can sell more books that way. But if you wait for the birthday, we're limited. So yeah,
I love it, man. I love it. Don't worry about it, guys. We'll have all the links in the show notes. You won't have to remember a thing. Make sure you guys pick up a copy of Michael's book. So Michael, as we wrap up here, man, like what's next for you? What's on the horizon?
Well, I just finished up a movie, but also, our podcast, man. We're just going to dig into the Funny How Life Works podcast and just have some more stuff with that. And of course, we have a course out called Funny How Life Works. So we're really going to use this time to really use funny. Rick Warren gave me a book. Actually, he didn't give it to me. He told me to buy it. I'm like, really, dude? That's how we're going to do this? So it's a book called The Humor of the Christ. And it talks about how Jesus actually probably used comedy to talk to his disciples and whatnot. But we don't see it as comedy because we know the end of the story. Like, that wasn't funny. He had to get up on the cross. But he actually was using funny in the midst of it. So that book really opened my eyes to saying, hey, how can I use more comedy to help people understand more about life, man? So I'm excited about the podcast, super excited about the book. Please go get that. And then the course that we got too.
Man, I love this. We're going to have, like I said, guys, we'll have all the links in the show notes, so not to worry. But Michael Jr., man.
Yeah. Guys, go play the reblame game. Do the reblame game. I'm telling you, do it with regards to your father for sure, and reblame him for some amazing stuff that's going on in your life right now that you couldn't see before because you were only looking at the negative, not necessarily the truth.
I love that tactic, man. That's a cool game. Mm-hmm. Especially like I can just see you being in the same room with all the ballers with their jets, right?
Yeah.
Hey, let me flip the switch here.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can. Yeah, man.
They're all in tears and stuff. And I'm like, snap, what just happened? But that's just me listening in the moment. Yeah. And I did the same thing with the book. In the moment while I'm writing the story, I'm like, it was stuff I didn't even see before. And we were able to put it in these pages. Man, I cannot wait till people read this. Like, I can't wait. I'm so excited.
It's good stuff, man. You're doing good work in the world, my friend.
Yo, I appreciate you, man. Way to be on the real too. Like, you played the game for real. I know most of your people are just listening, but I'm able to read your facial expressions and do the math on where you're going with this. And you played all in with the reblame game, dude. So if you're listening, you're in good hands because he's bringing it for real.
Man, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.